The Vikings aren't playing nearly as bad as it feels. It's just that a backup quarterback is holding them hostage. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers, those of you who are here, rain, snow, or shine through death and life, who are here every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. By the way, you can get episodes of Locked On Vikings ad-free on Amazon Music. Just a shout. Today, of course, we're recapping the Vikings' 28-22 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles at home. Extraordinarily frustrating loss. One of those where the score makes it feel like, ooh, you kind of did go toe-to-toe with a backup quarterback with the Philadelphia Eagles, but the vibes are like, I never want to watch this team play football again. And newsflash, they're playing again on Thursday. You got like 4 days to lick your wounds before they're going to do this to you again and on primetime in front of everybody. So let's start with the big topic, which is, of course, Carson Wentz. And who's going to play quarterback next week is something we'll get to later in the week. Kevin O'Connell didn't divulge anything, and I don't think he should, even if the decision is made, even if he knows already. Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter reported that, this is now a 6-week injury, which matches what J.J. McCarthy told us, which would mean he's set to miss the Chargers game and return against the Lions the week after. But Kevin O'Connell isn't going to confirm or deny any of that and leave it all up in the air. We'll see. It's a short week, so it'll be hard to kind of, we'll see. It's tough. So if you caught that, or if you were just looking for that answer, that's your answer. But for the other part of it, which is, okay, well, how did Wentz play? How should we feel about this? Oops is how I think the word that I would use. Oops out of 10 is what I would give him. Woof out of 10. This was a terrible game. This was, I think, the worst game that Wentz has played as a Viking. And I don't think it's close. The Steelers game had, I think, more redeeming elements, more of the cool kind of play. That throw to Xavier Scott in the back of the end zone in Dublin, that was cool, right? Like there were some of those, right? This game had the worst mistakes. Hey, he threw 2 picks in Dublin too, but both of those were tips. Both of those were bad luck. These 2 picks were just straight up bad, just not taking care of the football. And you have to take care of the football, especially when the Vikings haven't forced a turnover since the Jake Browning disaster week 3 game. They have not turned the ball over, forced turnover on defense yet. So you have to play pristine football to keep up in those situations, and you're not. So that's part of it. But the other part is just a ton of mistakes. The story of this game, I won't go through each of the moments, chronologically or anything like that. You can watch the highlights, but the story of this game is that the Vikings get down to the red zone 5 times, and they're only able to, or 6 times, and they're only able to score once. And one of them, they don't even end up in the red zone by the time all is said and done because of a snap that goes over Carson Wentz's head. And if you want to go through kind of what happened on all of these, and let's do that, because we did that on the squad show as well on the postcast, if you caught that. But it bears repeating because I think it really does a good job of telling the story of the whole game. The opening drive, the Vikings get down to the red zone. They get to a 3rd and 10 after Carson Wentz misses Addison in the flat for what could have been a touchdown. At least the broadcast thought so. I thought they were being a little charitable, but still, what would have looked like an easy first down at the very least brings you to a 3rd and 10. Snap goes over Carson Wentz's head. He chases it back. They lose 22 yards, and they have to kick a way longer field goal. Thankfully, Will Reichard still bails them out of that situation, and he ends up being the hero, but rough times, right? Later in the game, the Vikings get all the way down to 2nd and 1 on like the 8-yard line. They throw a fade to Justin Jefferson. It gets broken up by a phenomenal play by Cooper DeJean. You just tip your hat on that one. They run another pass play that should have been a touchdown, but Wentz sails it. You had to open Jalen Naylor. If you put it on him, it's there, but it's way too high and it's way too far out in front of him. Totally uncatchable. And then you have 4th and 1, where you get a touchdown pass that is caught and is a touchdown, but is called back for a holding penalty. That is a controversial holding penalty. I actually did a breakdown on Blue Sky of it. There was a tug. They're going to call the tug. I think it's kind of as simple as that. And they have been calling that consistently. You may not have noticed because every time they call it, the broadcast complains that they shouldn't be calling this, but we've like had that moment a lot. The broadcast complained on Monday Night Football against the Bears in week 1 when the Vikings were the beneficiaries of a similar call. They complained in the playoffs when the Bills committed one against the Ravens. That was the exact same thing. They've been calling this consistently. So I do think Blake Brandel held. So Blake Brandel with a bad snap and a holding penalty is now sabotaged 2 red zone drives. Then you get to the first drive of the second half, right? So you got 6 points in the first half again, by the way. This is the 4th of 5 games where you've gotten no touchdowns in the whole first half. Dreadful. You get to the first drive of the second half, and you're all the way to the red zone again. Carson Wentz has a wide open CJ Ham in the flat for what again looks like, hey, there's a hat on a hat. He could absolutely score that. Looks at it, turns it down inexplicably. And Kevin O'Connell complained about this on the podium afterwards and said he should have thrown that. Should have thrown it for some reason, doesn't like it, and then essentially dirts it like it's a screen that he doesn't like, but there's no receiver in the area. So it goes down as intentional grounding, and suddenly it's 3rd and 18, and they end up kicking. You go down to the next drive is the one they actually score, and they score on a wildcat. The best way, I guess, to score in the red zone is to not have Carson Wentz anywhere near, like touch the ball at any point in the play. They get down to the red zone again on their 3rd drive of the half. So 3 drives, 3 red zone trips. But then Blake Brandel gets smoked for a sack on 3rd down, and they end up kicking again. And on the last one, you could either put it on Blake Brandel getting beat for a sack or Carson Wentz for holding the ball too long for a sack, but they take a terrible sack on 1st and goal from the 10. They end up 2nd and goal from the 18. They can't make it happen. They end up kicking again. So 5 trips to the red zone, all of them ruined by either Carson Wentz being a bozo or Blake Brandel not being a viable center. So there's 2 things to discuss there, right? And I don't want to insinuate that Carson Wentz didn't do anything good in the whole game, and every single time he touched the ball was bad. He had some good throws. It just wasn't nearly enough to make up for the fact that this team could have scored on 6. I mean, they did score on 6 of their 9 drives. They scored. And they got to the red zone, I think, in every single one of those 6. They had 6 red zone trips in 9 drives. And a lot of good Wentz stuff on the way to those red zone trips. But those red zone trips died because due to, in large part, Carson Wentz. Either missing throws, baffling turndowns, or just not seeing the field, trying to run around and do stupid stuff, and making bozo plays. I want to go deeper into Carson Wentz maybe later in the week. It's a short week, so it'll be hard. But also, assuming he plays against the Chargers, we'll have kind of another mini-buy situation where we'll have time to kind of reassess and follow up on the Browns-Steelers thing that I did with him after the Euro trip. But really quickly, the other thing that really sabotages the Vikings here is Blake Brandel. And I'm singling out these 2 players really hard. Look, Justin Jefferson, hey, maybe you could have made that catch against Cooper DeJean, right? You know, you got to win that rep. There was a terrible throw in the red zone from Carson Wentz that should have been a touchdown to TJ Hawkinson at the end. That was wide open TJ Hawkinson, but it was he missed Hawkinson by yards, and Hawkinson had to just like dive, lay out all the way for it. Couldn't quite bring it in. Arguably maybe did bring it in. He was actually hot about it in the locker room. The Vikings had a lot of problems with the refs in this game, but I think that's a really dreadful excuse considering the problems the Vikings had before. It's worth mentioning, and I know everybody's really mad at the refs. You're probably not wrong, but it also is just falls a little flat for me when you had so many problems of your own, like, you know, clean your own room, you know? But anyways, so TJ Hawkinson can't bring that in. Like maybe you want him to bring it in, like Brian O'Neill gave up a couple pressures. Donovan Jackson gave up a couple pressures. Like there are definitely blemishes elsewhere. But if you look at where, like the moments these drives stalled out in the red zone, without much exception at all, it's either a Carson Wentz mistake or a Blake Brandel mistake. And neither of those guys are starters, which is encouraging in a long-term sense. Once the starters come back, hopefully that's, but also, at least with Brandel, you didn't have to have that guy out there. And so this feels to me like the Vikings got a little cute with their depth chart and cost themselves a game. And it's not just Brandel that had that. So it leads me to the question, does anybody on the Vikings know who the good players are? Because it seems like they are wildly confused about who they actually like and don't like. Let me explain what I mean about that next. Today's episode is brought to you by Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and all of this extra red tape and nonsense. That's not SaaS, that's SAD, software as a disservice. Got 'em. That is why you need Rippling. It is a unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. And they've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of all of these like disconnected apps and tools with one system that is designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. I've never been a boss, but I've been at these companies where they have so many little stupid things and it is so impossible to get organized. So I would love it if I were an employee of yours and you got into Rippling. Right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. Once again, learn more at rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNFL for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day, you make decisions, you have takes, you have opinions, and you're right about so much of it. So why not get paid for being right? PrizePicks gives you the opportunity to do that. Just pick 2 to 6 of your favorite players and whether they'll do better or worse than their PrizePicks projection. It is that simple. So if you've got takes, go ahead and put in a lineup. And their new injury reboot feature makes it so that if your player leaves early and doesn't return, they'll just remove it from the lineup. It won't count against you, and you just kind of move on as if that was never part of it. But I think my favorite part about PrizePicks is just how quick it is. Earlier tonight, I submitted a PrizePicks lineup for Sunday Night Football at 5:19 Pacific time, and the kickoff was at 5:20 Pacific time. No problem at all from start to finish. It literally took me 1 minute. I got it in time. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LockedOnNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LockedOnNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Check out patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL for film breakdowns it's going to back up a lot of the takes that I've talked about with Wentz and Brandel and all of that too. I want to show my work, and that's where I do it. But let me ask the question. Do the Vikings know who their good players are? Because it seems like they have no earthly idea who they actually want to have on the field on a given game. And there are a bunch of baffling depth chart decisions that we've already complained about throughout the season, from the Justin School nightmares to what are they doing we've got quarterback stuff, right? I don't even want to call it a quarterback controversy. I don't think the Vikings are that excited about Wentz. It seems like Kevin O'Connell was actually pretty frustrated with Wentz after this game, and rightly so. He should be. But considering what's happening on the rest of the depth chart, I have no idea if they actually know who they like at quarterback at all, because they've been unbelievably indecisive about so many other spots on the line. So look, they enter the season with certain things on their depth chart, like Michael Juergens being the backup center. They never really had any interest in giving Michael Juergens competition as that backup center. It's kind of the same thing as Justin School. Justin School had that job from the get-go. There was very little. I think Walter Rouse took first team reps in camp for like a day, just as like a let's give you a shot to prove something, kid kind of deal. But it was never a true open competition. And yet, when Justin School went out with it was a concussion, I believe, earlier this year, Blake Brandel comes in, outplays him, and you go, maybe you should have considered that. How did they not know that would have been a better idea than this dude that's getting absolutely worked by Dallas Turner and Jonathan Grenard every day? Do you remember that from training camp? Similarly, Michael Juergens has no competition at all. There is never a thought of ever putting Blake Brandel at center. They only did it in an emergency capacity when they were overseas and Michael Juergens got hurt. And Brandel plays at center. He plays okay in that Browns game. I say okay because it was entirely inoffensive, but no part of it really led me to think, oh, this guy should like be a center forever. Wes Phillips said it. They trot him out in this game, and he's a disaster. He botches a snap. He gets beat for several crucial sacks. I think he gives up 6 pressures. I can think of 3 sacks that I would blame on him off the dome. Let me go to the tape and make sure that I'm not overcounting that. It could only be 2, but that's still really bad. Like there's 2 I'm really sure of, and there's 1 that I'm a little fuzzy on. But the point is, Blake Brandel should not have been playing center in this game, and he was only playing center in this game because they overemphasized the value of, let's be honest, playing decent in the Browns game. One decent game, and then suddenly you're the guy. Where was this in all of camp? Where was this? Why were it? There's really no way out. You either made a terrible decision now, which is where I'm going to put my flag, or you made a terrible decision week 1 in camp in never considering this in the first place. If it truly was such a good secret, why didn't you know? Chris Cooper, you work with all of these guys all day long. Why didn't you know that he could play center? Why didn't you know that this was an option at all? Maybe you could have had an open competition between Brandel and Juergens as the backup center. Maybe you could have rolled into the season with Blake Brandel being the backup center. Hey, he's new to the position this year, but he did really well. We took some camp. We got a lot of practice. He knows how to snap. These problems wouldn't happen. If he had played a little center in camp, you best believe he'd have been a little better at snapping the ball. So either way you slice it, whether you think this was a good call or a bad call, at some point the Vikings were making the wrong one. There's no 2 ways about it. And I would feel the same way if the Vikings did end up going with Wentz throughout the whole year. I would lose my mind if that happened. I would feel like I was in a prank show if that happened, because Wentz has been truly dreadful. But the ambiguity is gone. I know Sam, we were on the podcast, he was asking for like a nuanced, complex conversation. I was like, man, that nuance was a pick 6 ago, man. that nuance has left the building. We've seen 4 games of this. We know what he is, and it's not satisfactory. But I digress. I don't want to get into the quarterback thing all day. Point is, the indecision around who should be playing. Brandel should have been playing tackle instead of school. And being the emergency center in the Browns was admirable, great hero moment. But continuing with it on purpose, you forgot that you were overcoming a lot of things that I talked about before the game, about how if you do this, you're throwing out a lot of practice and you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants. If you don't have to do that, you probably shouldn't do that. You shouldn't pay costs you don't have to pay, right? And especially after the botch snap and then giving up a sack on the next one and then giving up a sack later in the game. And how many drives needed to stall before they pull this guy out and say, okay, we tried something. Whoops, we got a little carried away. Let's just put the regular guy back in. But they never did it. Michael Juergens only played a couple reps when Blake Brandel had a helmet issue. And once that issue was resolved, Brandel went back in. So they never made that decision. And they really, really should have. And I truly think, the more I look at what plays cost those drives and who I'm blaming for those plays, Brandel cost them more than Wentz did. As much as I'm complaining about Wentz, Brandel cost them more than Wentz did. It was a terrible game. And he held this team hostage when Jordan Addison was going for $128, when Justin Jefferson was making all kinds of crazy plays. Hawkinson was making all kinds of crazy plays. Darisaw and O'Neal were holding up. The talent, the expensive players, the stars, the core of the team had a winning worthy performance, and players that didn't have to be out there, like Blake Brandel and some stuff on defense I'll get to, were costing you your game. But that stuff on defense. Okay. So a couple of crazy things you may have noticed. You may have at one point been like, wait, Eric Wilson, who had an okay game. He had a really great sack and then another good play on, I think it was a run fit, but no Ivan Pace, healthy scratch in this game. Not inactive, but took no reps on defense. I don't even think he took reps on special teams, if I recall. But I correct me if I'm wrong there. I'm just going on. I didn't notice him on special teams, I guess I should say, which is not conclusive. Let me look that up. Okay, I can't look it up yet, so we're just gonna have to go with that. But still, nothing on defense. So what happened? What's going on here? My immediate thought is is there going to be a trade tomorrow? And he was actually inactive because he's packing his bags and they're going to trade him to Miami or whatever. So I guess that's something to watch. That is like around the trade deadline. We're kind of in that time of year when somebody is like surprisingly inactive or surprisingly not playing a lot. It's because they're about to trade him and they don't want to risk the injury and the trade falling through. So that could be something. I would be pretty irate about that. Just like, again, on purpose, start Eric Wilson all year. Or is Ivan Pace now benched for Eric Wilson? And that's what happened when Blake Cashman came back, which, again, you can't be on the right side of that. You're either making the wrong decision now or you made the wrong decision without really giving it any consideration in camp. There was never a competition with Ivan Pace and Eric Wilson. Why wasn't there a competition if 6 weeks into the season you're rethinking this now? What happened? What weren't you looking at then that you're looking at now? Should you be looking at it now, or are you wrong to do that, or were you super wrong before? Either way, egg on your face. And then the other one is on the defensive line. Javon Hargrave, 18 snaps in this game. I said after the Browns game that I low-key thought he might be getting benched because of problems in the run game. Because he split reps with Jalen Redmond about 50-50. Well, now Jalen Redmond is strongly outsnapping Javon Hargrave. And I think they're right to do it. Jalen Redmond has been phenomenal, a bright spot in this game for sure. And somebody I really, really, really want. I've been waiting to do a Patreon video on him. And if I don't get to it in the short week, I really want to get to it after because he's been really awesome and I want to show you. But he's getting a true starting role at this point. And Javon Hargrave is going by the wayside. While I think that this time I agree with them, where was that week one? I could have told you. I'm a podcaster, man. I could have told you that Javon Hargrave struggled in the run game against double teams. We saw Garrett Bradbury sled him. We saw Blake Brandel sled him at guard. We saw Ed Ingram sled him in week 2. We cooked him. Destroyed him. And I thought, okay, well, maybe he's a designated pass rusher. Nope, every down, we're going to put him in the run game, and then we have one of the worst run defenses in the league. Well, the run defense played better this time, and maybe that's because Javon Hargrave wasn't on the field. Maybe it's because Ivan Pace wasn't on the field. But the coverage dissolved. So was it worth it? Jalen Hurts got a perfect passer rating. They gave up 28 points and really should have given up 31. It's just the Eagles didn't kick at the end because they didn't have to, but they were right in point-blank range again. Tons of explosives. The coverage had a pretty bad day. Great day on success rate, but gave up so many explosives that it ruined it. So I again ask, what was the plan here? You made all these interesting personnel decisions, more Jalen Redmond, more Eric Wilson, more Blake Brandel. All of them seem to have kind of bit you or maybe given you what you wanted, but maybe at more of a cost than you thought. So does anybody know who can play on this team? Or did these coaches just show up today and go like, I don't know, you look like you're pretty athletic. Like, did they practice with each other? Did they know their play? Why doesn't anybody know their players? I think this is kind of crazy. You walk into the season with a depth chart and you stick to that depth chart unless somebody gets hurt. And sure, yeah, sometimes, you have like a Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones situation where Jordan Mason's going to outplay and maybe we'll see what Aaron Jones's job is coming back because of the injury. That happens, but it shouldn't be happening all over your depth chart where it seems like every start-sit decision was wrong in week 1. What are we doing? Or are we wrong now? We don't know because they're losing games. But at the end of the day, it led the coverage to totally break down. And so what happened to Brian Flores' defense is another question I'm sure a lot of you have, and that's what I want to get into next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breath work, all of these details that I'm complaining about in this game, all of that stuff matters. The little bit of the top of your drop or that tiny little tug versus a club that's the difference between a touchdown and a holding penalty. That all matters. And Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but when every little detail is perfect, from the Japanese craftsmanship to the Napa leather upholstery, smooth handling, intuitive controls, and all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV. So you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like NFL players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and the NFL season is well underway. And hey, if you are super disillusioned with the Vikings and you just want to watch other stuff, there's more Monday night doubleheader going on, you just want to get a bet going, FanDuel is a perfect place for that. If you're new, you can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick any bet, put down $5, And if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So whether you want to use that for something distract, bet against the Lions, just so you have a stake and you're really rooting for the Bucks, so like put some money on that, or the opposite, an emotional hedge, or you could bet against the Vikings in their next game and say, well, if they lose, at least I won something. I respect it. Whatever it is, put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Hey, at FanDuel, so they have like their first half, second half, where you can just bet on one of the halves. You can actually do that live as well in the middle of a game. But like the Vikings, I don't think they've covered a first half ever, except for the Bengals game this whole year. So I don't know, something to keep in mind. Whatever you want to do, visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So what happened, Brian, are you with us? Brian, what happened? The defense, look, I'm probably being too harsh to the defense because the run defense did pull it together. They got really, really smoked in the first drive. Cam Jurgens went out, their center. I didn't realize we had a Jurgens off in this game, but we did, or we could have. We did, I guess, at some points. But Cam Jurgens goes out in this game and the run game falters a lot. It could have been because of that. It could have been because of defensive adjustments. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll look at it later. But either way, the run defense, all in all, gets to pretty good marks for the day once they get past that first really bad touchdown drive. It's the coverage that really falls apart here. This is a little bit closer to kind of how I thought the defense would fail when it failed this season. They've really surprised me in the opposite way. For most of this season, this one felt like we're going, oh, okay, yeah, Isaiah Rodgers is a $8 million cornerback going up against A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and take some L's. And I'll start with the Isaiah Rodgers part of it because he has a pretty rough game. Somebody, he posts on his Instagram story a DM that he gets from somebody, and this is not a unique thing to him at all, and it probably wasn't even the only one like it he got today. So I want to address it really quick. So somebody DMs him all kinds of vitriol, just pure venom, racial slurs. I'm not going to read it out, but it's really, really, really bad. Just insults and anger. And he screenshots it and says, don't delete him. And then the guy immediately crawls into a hole and says, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that, blah, blah, blah. But it's too late. And he posts it. And you just get an insight into how people treat NFL players, and because they forget that they're people, they're fantasy assets to you. So if you're the kind of person that thinks that it's a cool thing to do, to be like if you're mad, to shoot an Instagram DM to the player that made you mad and swear at them or insult them or call them a racial slur, I want you to know that you are not welcome to me. That I don't think that you are a cool person at all, and I think I probably shouldn't say what I really think of you on a family show, but I think that's just the most pathetic possible thing that you can do. Grow up. Probably the kid that did that, but I would say that to a kid too. Grow up. Be more of an adult than that. You're a big kid. Be a big kid. On the field with Isaiah Rodgers, it was a rough game. It wasn't horrible in a lot of the zones, but I would say that on both sides of the ball, quarters got really victimized. That was what I think. I mean, it's hard for me to tell on the broadcast, but at least on the Vikings offensive side of the ball, they basically did what I hoped that they would do going in. They found the quarters side in cover 6. They ran it out at it. Jordan Addison, speed out, Jordan Addison, speed out, Jordan Addison, speed out against somebody who's playing man outside and deep and who's going to be dropping too far, kind of no matter who they are. It was Quinyon Mitchell, it was Keely Ringo, it was Adoree Jackson before he got hurt. No matter who you are, you're going to drop too deep on this, or it was Cooper DeJean. You're going to drop too deep on this, and we're going to hit you on the out. And that's one of Carson Wentz's favorite throws. So it worked really well. Good job to Kevin O'Connell for finding that play call, by the way. I know he's getting a lot of heat for his play calling, throwing 3 times in the red zone. It's really hard for me to get on that wagon when you've got wide open guys all over the place. I mean, just like a high school quarterback could have put up, Jacoby Brissett could have put up 4 touchdowns in this game with these play calls. You can't throw it for him. I firmly think the quarterback ruined good play calls. Those were excellent play calls, and the quarterback destroyed them. Coach can't do much about that. But anyways, on the other side with Hurts and with the Vikings defense and Isaiah Rodgers, they found when he was in man, they found when he was in man outside and deep, which against a go ball turns functionally into man. And they found situations where he had responsibilities underneath and responsibilities deep, like with palms, and they hit him with double moves. So when you're an outside corner, when you're in Isaiah Rodgers' world, and the Vikings are in their like 4 deep, 2 under coverage, like for a blitz, and a big problem was the blitzes didn't get home. We'll get to that, but I have questions about the Ivan Pace decision there. He's a very good blitzer. But the idea is, if it's like a tunnel screen, or if you see like a swing pass or something, you're allowed to trigger and go down and tackle it, even though you also have a deep responsibility. And if you do trigger, the inside safety has to come over and make the play now, right? And so you get a lot of people trying these like honey hole shots, but the Vikings are pretty good at defending that, and a lot of those go incomplete. The problem is, if you make it look like something that Isaiah Rodgers is going to bite on, you can get him to bite on that double move. That isn't exactly what happened on that last play to A.J. Brown that functionally iced the game, but it's a similar logic where he was in off man. When you're an off man against the blitz, or they're in that zero look, right? That cover zero, all up presentation. That was the way that Brian Flores put it in a video once. That's their internal term for it. An all up presentation. That means everybody's up on the line of scrimmage except for the cornerbacks, and you have one for each eligible receiver, and they're all way far off, 7-8 yards off the ball, right? Because you can't be in press. If you get beat over the top, it's a touchdown. And Rodgers is in his off coverage, and it looks like it's a sluggo. It's just slant and go, right? Well, what are you going to run against this blitz? All the time, you're going to see slants. So of course you're super keyed into that slant. The problem is that because of the play call, Josh Metellus was backing out of that pressure and had inside help on that slant. So if Hurts tried to throw that, Metellus would have picked it. So there was no reason for Rodgers to bite on this. He admitted that after the game. He said, that's on me. I definitely should have realized I had inside help. I took the eye candy, and that's my bad. So he screwed up on that one. And he gets beat on another double move over the top for like a 72-yard touchdown, where again, I kind of felt like he played like he should have had help over the top, but he didn't have the help he thought he had over the top. I don't know if that's because Theo Jackson was slow as the middle third safety, or because Isaiah Rodgers played it poorly again. I'll have to like take a good look at it and see how I feel about it, and see like what diagnosis I would give you. I'll give you my best guess, but I don't know. But the point is, I think the problems were rooted in just sort of unfamiliarity with what help you do and don't have, which is a bummer because that unfamiliarity wasn't here earlier in the season. It was really only here the first time. And it actually turns out that it was reported that in the Eagles locker room at halftime, Devonta Smith was like, that play is there. That play's been there all day. We got to hit it. And sure enough, they hit it, I believe, on the first play. It was the first drive out of halftime, wasn't it? That they hit there? Yeah, it was the first drive out of halftime on that post, on that deep post bump. So whatever it was, that weakness was there, that tendency was there, and they couldn't pick it up. Well, I'm sure that they'll get that fixed, and you're not going to see that same deep post bomb from LA anymore. I'm sure they'll be really honed in on that. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. The sort of like, especially when you're blitzing all the time and the blitzes aren't getting home, the little sort of cracks in the armor with the back end coverage start to get exposed, especially when you got Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, who I know they've had a weird year, but those are good players. And they can expose those mistakes. But let's really quick get into those blitzes. I would like to take a closer look at why those things didn't get home. But again, we've got a baffling personnel decision where the Vikings went 40 tackles a lot in this game. They had Redmond, Allen, Hargrave, and Levi Drake Rodriguez all on the field. Sometimes that was your D-line. And now those guys are pass rushing and trying to chase down Jalen Hurts. Sure enough, he makes a bunch of scramble plays. Or it was like 3 of those guys in Grenard, and then you take Dallas Turner off. So Dallas Turner played like 60% of the snaps, while Grenard played mostly all of the snaps. And in 5 D-line sets, it was only half of them actually included Dallas Turner. The other half were 4 D tackles in Grenard. To me, that is a baffling personnel decision. That is a sacrifice of speed for bulk, because you're so afraid of Saquon Barkley. That's my theory for why they make that decision, right? Let's plug up the gaps with all of our biggest guys and not lose to the run game. But then you have Eric Wilson in coverage, who is a liability, and Blake Cashman as your linebackers, and then you're relying a lot more on the secondary. And again, did you forget that this is a patchwork secondary? Did you forget that Jeff Okudah is one-on-one with AJ Brown? Do you think that's going to work all day? And apparently they did. And they really sacrificed a lot of their pass rush ability. Not to mention, when they did send blitzes, you don't have that cannonball of Ivan Pace and that pop. You didn't have the speed of Dallas Turner going from, peeling from edge rush to go attack that screen and help the corner. It worked. He actually did make that play in one of the times he was on. But I think taking those two guys off the field really hurt the coverage. They had a run-first mentality on defense. They didn't get run on, but they did get passed on. I think that they have overcooked this. And I've been saying that all year. The Vikings have a huge overthinking problem. They've overthought their depth chart. They've overthought their scheme at points this season, offensively and defensively now. They've overthought their... Kwesi has overthought... trading away Harrison Phillips looks like a dumb move. Getting rid of Mekhi Blackman isn't looking great. Like the personnel decisions and roster decisions they've made, let alone depth chart, who's in, who's out, sub decisions, all seem really overthought. Just put the players out there and play ball. I am begging you. You have the talent to play a much more straight up game than you're playing. I know a lot of what they're doing is making up for having Carson Wentz and he doesn't know the whole playbook and you're throwing only the throws and you're trying to make him comfortable. And I get that. You've got to do that. But at least on defense, it feels very self-inflicted. It feels very much like that old tweet from like 10 years ago that's like, hey, watch this. And then I fall over and it's not clear what move I was trying to do. Like, I don't get the logic of a lot. I get the logic of a lot of these things, but I guess I can't help but think that they are way overcoaching. And it's time to just go let guys play ball when those guys are Jonathan Grenard and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Christian Darrisaw. They know what they're doing. Just go let them win reps instead of making every single play where we can do this, but nobody has to win a rep. They're calling this incredibly expensive, talented veteran roster as though it's a roster of rookies you have to protect. And I think they just way overthought their personnel thing. And they pulled out a bunch of their starters and they put in backups because they were bigger. That's what I feel like. Maybe Ivan Pace got benched. Maybe he gets traded on Tuesday and this all makes sense. But then that becomes my own critique again, right? Of what I was talking about earlier of like, then why weren't you doing this from the first place if you really think Eric Wilson's better than Ivan Pace? Where was that week one? Where was that camp competition? It is a discombobulated and disorganized team. And while, yes, they only lost by 6 to the Philadelphia Eagles, and there may be some pride in kind of making a game of it, the Vikings have serious, fundamental, season-threatening issues that have them at 500 and will have them well below it if they don't address it. And I've been saying this for weeks, and they haven't addressed it. I'm extraordinarily concerned. 9 out of 10 on the concern scale. We are concerned. We are at DEFCON 2. It is scary. They have to fix it. Fix it now, or be forgotten about by Thanksgiving. Those are the options. Get your questions in. Google form is in the show notes. If you want to get involved in Town Hall Tuesday, I'll answer those questions and take your hot takes tomorrow. And as always, Skull.